Chapter 7 of Pachinko was essentially a detailed look at the day Hansu, Lee Min-ho, became the Hansu that we know and love hate. To understand what happens in episode 8, you have to go back to episode 6, which featured the return of Hana, Mary Yamamoto. Justin Chan and writers Lauren Yi and Soo-hyo dedicated a huge chunk of its runtime to showing Hana reconciling with Sunja, Yaon Yoyung, and Itsuko, Keiho Minami. In 1931, Isak, Steve Sang-you had an awakening about the future of Koreans under Japanese oppression, while Sunja, Minha Kim, gave birth to her first child, Noah. The seeds of starting his own pachinko business was planted in Solomon's, Jinha, had by Yoshii, Liu Sozawa. And as Hansu received news of Noah's birth, he told his wife to leave because he had no use for her. Written by Mfiniso Udofia and Soo-hyo, and directed by Justin Chan, Pachinko Episode 8 has a lot of intersecting plotlines and covers a lot of ground. So, strap in. Noah's origins. In 1938, Noah at Jijin Park is introduced as this strong, courageous kid who motivates his classmates to not be afraid of bullies. He probably isn't aware of his lineage, and he has a strong bond with Isak, as they talk about the newly born Misasu's birthday ceremony. Noah is curious why they're holding a party for Misasu, and Isak explains that not too long ago, many babies died before their first birthdays. So, they're celebrating the fact that Misasu has made it this far. You can see some childish jealousy in Noah as he questions why everything is about Misasu. Isak says that since Noah is the older brother now, he has to be responsible enough so that his brother can count on him for many things. Noah questions if Isak and Sunja did a ceremony for him on his first birthday. Isak says that they did because Sunja insisted on doing so despite their meager resources. Noah regrets picking the red yarn, an indicator of long life, and not the bow and arrow, and he wishes that Misasu picks the coins, so that he could make their family rich in the future. Hana's final moments. I can imagine that it must be a little weird to be cast in one of the best shows of all time, with a role as impactful as Hana's, and perform only from the confines of a bed. That said, Mary Yamamoto delivers an absolutely fantastic and heart-wrenching performance, as she essays Hana's failing health. It's nothing but accentuated by all the acting around her from Keiho Minami, Soji Arai, and Yaon Yoyung. The doctor tells Itsuko that if they want, they can prolong this state that Hana is in. But that's only going to prolong her pain instead of freeing her from it. Itsuko disagrees with him, thereby cementing the fact that Hana is going to die. Solomon meets up with Hana and requests that he look after Itsuko after Hana's gone. When Solomon asks if Hana is scared of death, she admits that she is. However, Hana can't believe that she is going to go out like this, after leading such a carefree life. Hana says that she imagined she would die in a place like Hawaii, on its beaches. Then she laments about squandering everything she had, and how she doesn't want the same to happen to Solomon. Solomon responds by apologizing to Hana for not coming to look for her sooner, for playing by everyone else's rules and obeying everyone else's orders, and for what? Hana musters up the last dregs of her strength to tell Solomon to stop his self-pitying, and go and get what he wants for himself. By Isak's arrest, Noah returns from school on his own to inform Sunja that Isak didn't come to receive him. Sunja and Noah go to the church where Isak preaches and learn that he has been arrested for partaking in anti-national activities against the Japanese. Sunja sends Isak to get Yoseb from the factory, which has recently employed him. Yoseb informs his boss and tells Noah that they've got about an hour to look into Isak's situation. The three of them go to the police station, and as Yoseb pleads with the police for Isak's release, Noah translates their conversation to Sunja, and they realize that Isak isn't coming out very soon. Yoseb promises that he's going to use his boss's influence to get Isak out. But as soon as Yoseb's boss hears that Isak is an anti-national, he not only withdraws his support, but also fires Yoseb as he fears all this will somehow harm his business. While exiting the police station, Sunja confronts a lady who was meeting an inmate to understand the gravity of the situation, because Sunja can't believe all this is happening. The lady reveals that Isak was, in fact, educating the Koreans to rise up against Japanese oppression, giving them hope in these dire times, and how he won everyone's trust and love with his passion. She then tells Sunja that she must meet Hasegawa in Wokim to get a better perspective. Hasegawa sits Sunja and Noah down, and explains his and Isak's plans to unite the workers of both Korea and Japan, and rebel against the emperor. Sunja rubbishes this movement by saying that while Hasegawa and Isak were conjuring big dreams, did they ever think of Sunja, Noah, and Misasu? The argument ends with Noah's outburst as he hears Hasegawa say that Isak is never going to come back, as the police raids the place for obvious reasons. Solomon finalizes his deal with Yoshii. Solomon finally tells Misasu that he has been fired from Shifley's. When Misasu asks why, Solomon tells him the truth, i.e., he told Jumja, Park Hyejin, to not sign because it felt like the right thing to do at that moment. Misasu orders Solomon to go back to America, and that's when Solomon reveals that he can't do that as well, as Shifley's was sponsoring his visa, and now it has been cancelled. And before Misasu can recover from this information dump, Solomon reveals his plans to work with Yoshii, because, technically speaking, he's the only one he can work with, since no one is going to hire him. Misasu expresses anger and tells Solomon to not collaborate with Yoshii, because Yoshii's grandfather had offered Misasu a similar deal. It was only for Solomon's mother and grandmother that Misasu managed to get out of it. Solomon says that he's going to go ahead with it despite Misasu's earnest trepidations. Now, although it seems that Solomon is there to meet Yoshii to invest in Pachinko, Solomon actually says that he wants to go in a different direction and into Colton hotels. Yoshii is skeptical, but still, he asks Solomon to explain his plan. Solomon says that Katsuabe, Yoshiomaki, and Colton hotels have invested 10 billion yen. But it won't be easy for them to liquidate their property so quickly, now that Jumja has refused to sell. Solomon sees that as a lucrative opportunity, as he thinks that whoever gets Jumja's land will get anything. Yoshii asks Solomon why he thinks that Jumja will sell this time. Here comes the disturbing part. Solomon knows she won't sell, and that's why he asks Yoshii to use his ways, i.e., to terrorize her into leaving her property. Then Solomon will seal the deal. Yoshii explains that they need to be quick about it, because the relationship between banks and landowners is very shaky at the moment. Frighteningly enough, they shake on it. Episode 8 of Pachinko begins in Osaka 1938. Noah is picked up from school by Isak and taken home. He tries to convince a fellow student to stand up for himself, given he's being bullied by his peers. Back home, there are birthday celebrations for Noah's brother, Misasu. Sunja and Isak are both there, of course, and as Misasu is encouraged to pick something from the table, we don't actually see what. Why doesn't Isak pick up Noah from school? Isak fails to pick up Noah from school. The reason stems from his church being ransacked by police. Isak has been arrested and apparently the crime is very bad. It would appear that someone has actually called him out by name too, but all Sunja knows at this point is that it could be politically driven. It's a serious situation, and something that Sunja intends to try and fight against. She sends Noah off on his own to bring Yoseb, who could help things. He heads down to the police station, but as Sunja sits and waits, Yoseb speaks to the officer. Noah translates. They're not saying much, but Yoseb is determined not to let his brother sleep in a jail cell. He's going to speak to his boss and try to swing things in his favor. However, when Yoseb mentions this is a political crime, he quickly realizes that his boss isn't going to help here. Why is Isak arrested? Outside, Sunja learns that there's more going on with Isak than she first thought. War is on the horizon and spies are everything. Isak taught the community that there are power in numbers. He managed to bring people together, uniting those working in the factories. Sunja meets with Hasegawa, who happens to be a professor, a communist something as Noah puts it. Basically, he's a rebel, and together with Isak they had dreams of bringing together workers from other countries to fight for peace and fair wages. Someone caught wind of what has been happening and outed him to the authorities. Unfortunately, this means that Isak is going to be found guilty. As they talk, police suddenly come storming into the room and arrest the professor and his wife. Sunja is also taken in for questioning, where she admits coolly that she can't read or write. She also calls Isak a good man, adamant that she knew nothing about his endeavor. Sunja is allowed to leave, but Isak is not so lucky. He's taken away by the police and not allowed to say goodbye to his son. As the car drives away, Sunja and Noah chase them up the street. It's no good, Isak has gone. What does Hana tell Solomon? Does she die? Back in the 1980s, we cut to the hospital where Hana is close to dying. Her eyes have yellowed. Sunja sits in the corner cutting an apple, while the doctor reveals the news to her parents that Hana is in a lot of pain. Outside the door, Solomon breaks the news to his father that he's going to stay in Japan. After what's happened with the old lady, there's no way he's going to be accepted back in the States. When he brings up the deal with Mamoru, Misasu is shocked and points out that actually, he too is offered the same lucrative deal from the man's grandfather. It's the same blood. I won't allow it, he says. Solomon refuses to listen though. What convinces Solomon to fight back? Why is he working with Mamoru? Back inside with Hana, she speaks plainly to Solomon, pointing out that the Americans made a fool out of him. It's time to stop feeling sorry for yourself. Whatever it takes, grab it all. Show them no mercy. She rasps, demanding that he fight back and do what he can. Hana wants him to live for her and fight back against those who would wrong him. What is Solomon's plan? Why is he working with Mamoru? Solomon realizes that cult and hotels are still at play, so Solomon meets up with Mamoru again, and decides they should work together. 10 billion yen has already been sunk into the project, but it won't be easy for them to sign over the deal for the grandmother's lot of land. The thing is, if Solomon could sweep in and organize a coup with her, they could ask for anything and cripple the very company that screwed him over. Solomon knows that the grandmother won't sell to him, but Mamoru has his ways of persuasion. If he can get that land, Solomon promises to drive a hard bargain with his old employers and bleed them dry. They're on a tight window though, given there could be a financial crash in the future, especially if Mamoru mentioning the bank seizing lots of land is anything to go by. For now though, we're graced with a beautiful juxtaposing shot of Hana and Sunja. The former is taken up onto the rooftop and given a beautiful final send-off before she passes away. There's joy in her final moments. Back with Sunja, grief and sorrow look set to drown her, as she's left on her own with no Isak. Back with Solomon for now though, Sunja hands over the pocket watch that's been in her family for years, and tells him he's responsible now. This watch saved their family, as it becomes clear that this is the same pocket watch that Hansu bought from the pawnbrokers. She wants that same good luck to be bestowed on Solomon and his future endeavors. What does Hansu say to Noah? Back in 1938, Sunja decides to try and make kimchi, intending to sell some down at the market while their family is on the ropes. With Isak gone, and Joseph struggling too, Sunja promises to chip in and do what she can to make sure they don't go hungry. While Noah is heading to school, Hansu happens to rock up in his white suit. He brings up the Kanto earthquake and how it split their world into a before and after. He knows what it's like to lose a father and tells Noah that it's not good enough just to survive. He needs to thrive as well. Be better than everyone around you. Not just Koreans but Japanese too. He urges the young boy. He wants Noah to be so good that everyone around him has to respect him and to never look back. It's a solid bit of advice, and something that sees him hand over the pocket watch we earlier saw Sunja hand Solomon. How does Pachinko Season 1 end? At the market, Sunja finds herself struggling to fit in and sell her kimchi. Thankfully she's offered a place right next to a butcher selling meat. It's just in time too, as all the workers show up from the daily commute. Hearing all the workers either side of her shouting out, she takes the initiative and steps up as a saleswoman. She begins selling kimchi in the street as the camera pans up, and we fade to black. Before we leave, there's a beautiful scene at the end of the show where several Korean women, survivors from this turbulent time in Japan, are interviewed. This alone helps to give a snapshot of what life was like, and it's an amazing addition to an excellent series. Pachinko has been beautifully illustrated across its 8 episodes, and while the ending is going to leave many curious regarding the fate of this utterly absorbing and heartbreaking story, it seems almost academic at this point that Apple will renew this. I mean, if Truth Be Told and Greatness Code can both get second seasons, then there's no reason why this one can't. Pachinko's final episode is a beautiful demonstration of survival, the personification of backing a lion into the corner, and watching as it strikes back with fierce determination. Both Sunja and Solomon have this same trait, with the former selling kimchi in the street, and the latter determined to fight back against his employers no matter what. The story involving Isak is tough to watch though, and seeing that he was a rebel is pretty shocking. Keeping the camera at Noah's level, seeing all of this almost through his eyes, is a really clever stylistic choice, and it's an understated quality that I'm sure many are going to overlook with this one. However, Pachinko should not be overlooked. This is a solid show and a beautifully presented journey. It's clear that this isn't the final destination for any of these characters, and I don't know about you guys, but I may have to read the book after watching this. Is Pachinko the best show of 2022? That is, of course, debatable, but right now it's set a very high bar indeed. Is Hana dead? Is there going to be a season 2? Via some of the best intercutting the small screen has ever seen, Pachinko shows Hana slipping away, Sunja being questioned by the Japanese, and Misasu having an argument with Sunja about Solomon's future. When Misasu brings up Noah, Sunja says that Solomon is not Noah, and that she won't let history repeat itself. In Hana's last moments, she calls out for Solomon, while we see Noah witness Isak being taken away by the police. Sunja and Noah run after the van that's taking away Isak, and Solomon rushes into the hospital to push Hana's hospital bed through the corridors and to the roof. Sunja falls back while Noah keeps chasing the car. Despite everyone's caution, Solomon continues to wheel Hana at top speed, thereby giving Hana a few minutes of relief. Noah fails to keep up, and the car takes away Isak for good. After bringing Hana to the roof, Solomon puts the traditional greeting garland on Hana, and partially fulfills her dying wish. And Hana breathes her last. In 1935, we see Sunja promising Noah that she's going to take care of everything now, while Sunja, in 1989, gives the watch, Hansu's watch, to Solomon, and says that she used to think that the watch was a curse, but it actually saved them many times. And she hopes that it will have the same effect on Solomon. Elsewhere, Junja sees a goon with dogs stationed in front of her house to intimidate her. Back in 1935, Sunja decides to sell kimchi in order to make a living. As usual, Yoshii protests. But Sunja convinces him that even though earning is a man's job, it won't hurt if they become a double-income household. Yoshii gives in. Kaingi helps Sunja make the kimchi, and for the first time in her life, Sunja sets out into the open competitive market to sell her kimchi. Although many shopkeepers don't allow her to park her kimchi cart due to the smell, one butcher makes space for her, and she begins selling her kimchi one container at a time. Hansu meets up with Noah on his way to his school, and asks him why he is so glum when he's going to school. Hansu says that he couldn't afford to go to school when he was a child. So, Noah should be glad that he is privileged enough to get an education. Noah asks who Hansu is, but he doesn't respond. Instead, he asks why Noah is taking the long path to the school, thereby hinting at the fact that Hansu keeps track of Noah's, and the rest of his family's, whereabouts. Noah, being the smart kid he is, notices that and asks Hansu how he knows about the path to Noah's school. To which, Hansu says that knowledge is his way of protecting himself. Noah admits that he takes the long route because his father used to do the same, as that would allow him to come across a pianist he liked. Over the shared loss of their respective father figures, Hansu advises Noah to not just survive, but be better than anyone else. And he tells Noah to take the shortcut to school from the next day instead of being sentimental, and to always look forward, never backward. Going by the last few minutes, which is like a mini documentary about the real-life Korean immigrants who stayed in Japan, it seems that there isn't going to be a season 2. There's a sense of finality to it, even though a lot of plot threads are left open-ended. If you have read Min Jin Lee's book, on which Pachinko is based, you will know that there's a lot to these characters and these stories. And creator Soo-hyo has said that she wants to make 3 more seasons. But, at the time of writing this article, Apple TV Plus hasn't officially announced a season 2, because that depends on how many people are interested in more Pachinko. Therefore, in the off chance that the show doesn't get a season 2, even though the characters' arcs will appear abrupt, that mini documentary will look like an emotionally satisfying concluding note. That said, let's all hope that we get the 3 seasons that Soo-hyo wants. What we know about Season 2 so far, not much is known about Season 2 at the time of writing, and as detailed above, we're predicting this one will be announced and return soon. Although we could be proven wrong of course. In a recent interview with Variety, which you can read here, Pachinko was actually pitched as a 4-season show. With so much rich backstory in the book, there's no way Pachinko was going to be able to tell all of that across the 8 episodes. In their own words, it would be a disservice to what the book accomplished. When you think about all the characters that we have, we want to live with them and move on this journey of what alive is. So that was always the intention when we filmed the show. Our fingers are crossed for Season 2. Given Apple's great track record with renewals, it's certainly possible that this one will return. However, we'll have to wait and see if this one's greenlit or not. For now though, we're under the impression that there will be a Season 2. Would you like to see Pachinko return for a 2nd season and beyond? What did you think of Season 1? Let us know your thoughts in the comments box.